This podcast was recorded on August 18th, 2022. Hello, ladies, gentlemen, people outside the binary. Broken Class is back in session. I'm your discussion leader, Thomas Gradient Huda, and I have probably, honestly, the most famous person I've ever had on my podcast, which I think if you do podcasting and things like this, it can be a real leg up and a really nice to have somebody who's willing to reach down into the proletariat and do a show with just an average fella. So Ben Gleib, comedian and a Young Turks contributor, political satirist. You are on the show. Welcome. How are you?
I'm really good, Thomas. Thanks for having me, man.
You are quite welcome. Let me tell people a little bit of a brief rundown. On your website, bengleib.com, you have a long bio.
And I need to make a shorter one there as like a teaser one because it's too long for people.
Yeah, but it is rich. It is rich, you know. It's like, and I'm a person who I take pride in all these little things I've done. So I have a hard time doing the one-page resume thing. Yep. But for example, things that you did that actually came to my attention was the 2020 election, when you kind of determined, as I had determined at the time, that nobody looked like they would be able to defeat Trump using conventional political tactics, and you decided to run for president. And you had a relative amount of success, despite the fact that people were gatekeeping at every corner, I would say, and often giving you this slick little, "You're a comedian. Is your campaign a joke?" Kind of, they think it's funny, and ultimately it's probably not that funny every time they're doing it. But you also were the host of the show Idiotest, 210 episodes. Recently, it was on Netflix, trending. It's a game show where you did brain teasers essentially and demonstrated your love of owning idiots, revealing the stupidity that we are a little bit too okay with potentially in our society, or that we promote. And you had a moment where you walked out on Tommy Lahren show on Fox Nation that I thought was full of integrity and passion. You also in 2020, I believe, or 2021, you were on Charlie Kirk's show, who's a evangelist who was trying to get young people to be more evangelists so the whole country can follow Jesus. You owned him by showing a photo of a fetus that he was... Let's just talk about that for a second, then we'll get into your controversial opinion. What happened from your perspective on the Charlie Kirk appearance?
Sure. I mean, I've never even thought of him as an evangelist. He's more of to me, a social and political evangelist than he is a religious evangelist. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure he also wants everybody to be very fervent with his exact religious beliefs too. But he reached out and asked me in my DMs if I would go debate him in his studio in Arizona. And famously, Eric Swalwell, Congressman Swalwell, got the same DM and turned him down and put him on blast. And I instead said yes, because I wanted to go debate an insurrectionist to his face, even though he seemed to have one of those at the end when he walked off of the debate that I kind of made him bounce out of his own studio. Mm-hmm. One of my memes kind of highlighted that, but and I agreed to do it under very strictly negotiated terms that I negotiated over the course of weeks to make sure that he would not try to edit anything out, that I'd be allowed to shoot my own copy of it, right, and broadcast that on my own channels, and that they would fly me out and give me a car service and a hotel room and pay for my meals. And so I won all those negotiating points, so I finally said yes. And
well done.
And we had this debate. I studied every detail of abortion rights and abortion law and abortion advocacy and, reproductive rights advocacy for weeks, and was advised by some of the top organizations, like informally advised by Planned Parenthood and NARAL. And I see your shirt in the background there. I like that.
As I sit here and it says I'm standing with Planned Parenthood, just lazily
exactly
sitting.
Right. And as you're sitting, right. And Alyssa Milano gave me some great advice and some other really great people. And I flew out there, and my girlfriend and I, now fiance, flew out there and did the debate. And the rest of it unfolds, as you can see on my YouTube channel, the unedited version. It's also, he subsequently released an unedited version on his, after I put on blast the fact that he cut out the bonus section where I called him out on being an insurrectionist, and he stormed off his own show. So then he released another version which had that in it. But Mine's better because it doesn't even cut cameras. It's just intense on one iPhone shot the whole time. And then he stormed out, and his security kind of came down pretty intensely and aggressively, and my heart was beating pretty fast at the end of all that. And they were really hovering, trying to get us out of the building as soon as possible. But I still have the car service, so I asked them to take me and Carmel to a nice sushi restaurant in Phoenix, and had a $270 sushi dinner on Charlie Kirk's dime. If these idiots are going to give him millions of dollars to try to tear down the country, I was actually doing a service to the
all
country.
You need now is Ben Shapiro to get you ramen. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, he's probably getting raw men all the time, you know what I mean? All of these aggressively, I'm straight and my wife and I love having missionary sex, probably closeted gay dude, so good for him.
He was so disgusted by the concept of a wet pussy. He was really not.
Really? Was he?
You didn't see this? Oh, he was making fun of the Megan Thee Stallion Cardi B song, Wet Ass Pussy.
Oh, yes, I know that.
And he was repeating it and saying, and just talking about how, if you need a mop to wipe up, from this discharge happening, that might be the sign of a condition. Then you might want to get that checked out. He thought he was being witty, and then the internet said Ben Shapiro's never seen a wet vagina.
Wow, my wife has never been wet, and she is pleased on account of the fact that I financially tell her that, and she has no choice but to agree with whatever sexual nothing I give her.
And then a really slick advertisement, like rolling straight into like, use promo code never seen a wet pussy at
You need boner pills like I do? I'm Ben Shapiro.
See, the problem, Ben, with having you on the show is I am just I'm like barely funny for an average person. So the ability to like keep up, you're on the Nikki Glazer's podcast, you're on all these podcasts with actual comedians. I'm here trying to
Thomas, don't shortchange yourself. I've been talking with you now for a few minutes, and it's totally true what you're saying. But you'll step it up.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about
you're fantastic, dude. You're all good.
A controversial opinion. Besides that, I'm fantastic, which yields much controversy in the streets.
That was going to be my controversial opinion. Damn, I need another one now. All right.
But what is one that you have on anything?
Well, I have a new special that just dropped called The Mad King on YouTube. And in it, I talk about, I know you've seen it a couple times, 2.5 times.
Roughly 2.5. Yes.
That's what you told me. I love that. And in it, I do, early in the special, I talk about how I've been trying to write bits that like can actually make some progress instead of everything always preaching to the choir. And so I do a bit kind of appealing to racists and bigots and homophobes saying, look, we know you're never going to stop being that. So go ahead and be that. Continue being a bigoted person and complain about how much you hate groups that are different than you around your bitter, disgusting family Thanksgiving dinner. I don't even say disgusting. I say go ahead and do it around your sad little Thanksgiving table. All we ask is that you don't pass laws to make the lives of these people harder. That's it. What makes your opinion so much more important than other people? We all judge some group, and I kind of make it okay to judge people, I guess, in this opinion. I say, we all judge some group. There's some group we all judge. We just don't pass laws to try to make their lives more difficult. So you don't think trans people, a trans man is a real man. Fine, I don't think adults who skateboard, I don't think they're real men. But I don't try to stop them from using the bathroom they identify with.
Exactly.
So there's your controversy. Off the chain, off the top.
Well, in sincerity, you're acknowledging that, limitless idealism might be misguided to assume that humans, the same species that did insert X crisis here in every historical event that was bad and war, we still love war. This very flawed species of life will be capable of just ascending to some magical existence where we no longer have any prejudices. It's not particularly viable, I think.
Yeah.
And then I think, the left-right culture war has something to do a lot with, I mean, I feel like a lot of people on the right have said, okay, people on the left, they keep trying to virtue signal. They keep trying to what it is frankly improve their education about marginalized groups, to usher in a world where more people are afforded basic freedoms and rights. And a lot of people who don't like some of the language that's being used on the left and say you've gone too far, they might feel okay going far in the other direction and saying, I no longer care about, for example, the Obergefell ruling that allowed gay marriage to be federally legal. You know, it's almost like this cowboys and nerds dynamic that I don't know if we're even having the same discussion sometimes, which is why I like podcasting, because it allows for a long form, ability to pick apart what's going on in the world.
Totally. And two thoughts on that. There's no phrase that annoys me more than virtue signaling.
Right.
It's literally people. That's what some of the things they all three of those traitors kept shouting at me at the end of that Tommy Lahren debate, where the other one was actual traitor Brandon Strzok, saying virtue signaling. I'm like, you mean talking about caring about people? Right. Me speaking out loud about how we need to create equality finally for marginalized groups.
Right.
So the opposite of that is not speaking publicly to help people. And that's what you're mocking. Speaking publicly to help people is total insanity. Total insanity.
Yeah, the demonstration that one actually has a moral code and virtues about the world is somehow looked at like, ooh, gross shit lib.
So insane. And then what you said, there was another thing I was going to say, and I don't remember it.
That's fine. You also have this Nowhere Comedy Club. I'd love to get a update on where that is moving forward and what that's been like, because, for example, again, I've got a list of people who have been a part of this project that you did with Steve Hofstetter. I think you and him kind of co-led this initiative during the pandemic to create a space where comedians could get their livelihood taken care of by being able to do comedy shows in a way that was safe and took place online. And you got a lot of testimonials, people saying that it was a lot more dynamic and interesting than they had expected from a virtual experience. I mean, obviously people were doing shows in cars and, in rural Ohio, and Chappelle's hosting things. Everyone's trying to figure out how to do events and being able to get, comedy. Obviously, a lot of people in my audience might not be inclined towards like stand-up comedy or name it as one of their favorite things. It is one of my favorite things. I lived in Manhattan for a year. I went to a lot of clubs, and one thing comedians understand that maybe the general public doesn't is that you don't know that your act is working unless you're working it out on stage, and you need to refine it with an audience. So you had the Nowhere Comedy Club project, and you had guests such as Sarah Silverman, Bill Burr, Nikki Glaser, who's one of your good friends, Greg Proops, Jamie Kennedy, the Sklar brothers. I grew up loving their show Cheap Seats on ESPN. So funny. Judah Friedlander, Todd Barry, Christian Finnegan, the list goes on. And so I'd love to hear about that experience, and also moving forward, what's going on with it.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. It's just an idea that I had to try to solve for an immediate problem with my back against the wall, was trying to figure out how we could still have a very enjoyable and very workable, high-functioning online show. Because a lot of people were trying to do it, but they were failing at it and making it horrible, and really hurt us because they were staining the idea toward a lot of people's eyes. And
right.
We figured out how to do it. Steve and I figured out how to make it a really positive experience and make it really as close as you can get to recreating what it feels like to be out at a live comedy venue. And it was amazing. And what we didn't expect was how much, and we hoped it would give a lot of community and a lot of joy to people as an audience during a very hard time as well, which it did. But we didn't also expect that it would create such a strong-knit community. People's lives were really changed by it. I would get messages every couple of days of people saying they don't know if they would have made it through the pandemic if it weren't for Nowhere and the shows I would do there and Steve would do there and SDSC, our other show. And we also didn't realize we were solving for a need that exists that we never thought of, which is groups that can never go out or rarely can go out to an actual in-person venue to see live entertainment. People with financial limitations, people who can't get babysitters, people who live in remote areas and acts never come near them, or their favorite acts don't come for years to them. People with social anxiety.
To a bed.
People confined to a bed with disabilities, social anxiety, that are never able to experience a live show. And, we have people on the autism spectrum and with autism that come to our shows. We have people that have been introverts their whole lives that are now bit players in my Gleib Off the Top show and are funny characters on it. And it really was really cool. So in all pandemic, I did a show monthly with Greg Proops, a 2-man Whose Line Is It Anyway show, basically called Greg and Gleib, It's a G Thing. And the club is continuing. It's not at the height of where it was when nobody had any other options. So we're trying to figure out how to build it back up right now. But we've still got we have about 60 shows a month. And now we've got probably about 8 to 10 shows a month at the moment. And I recently did one with John Cleese. I mean, the absolute comedy legend and founder of Monty Python, and his daughter Camilla Cleese.
Who some of my audience will know as Nearly Headless Nick from Harry Potter.
Yes, correct. And we did a show called Please Gleib Me Alone. And we hope to do it again soon. And Paul Provenza's Green Room is coming back, and Kelly Carlin's going to be hosting. George Carlin's daughter is going to be co-hosting some of them with Paul Provenza. And we just did one at Nowhere. And so we're trying to figure out how to get more people to buy tickets to it again and more acts to perform at it. But it is still alive and well. And we'll see what the future holds for Nowhere. People can get tickets, check it out at nowherecomedyclub.com and peruse the shows and buy a ticket. They're cheap, $10 usually early bird, $15 if you get them late. And then you can even get VIP tickets where you can then get access to a private, intimate meet and greet afterwards, semi-private, where you're all together in a small Zoom and everybody gets a question guaranteed. And so it's a really cool experience, and I'm so glad that I did it. It's yet again another thing that I've done that kind of distracted me from my own comedy, which I seem to often get distracted from my own career needs to try to do these things that, help others, that help the country, running for office, that help comedy, creating this comedy club, that Telethon for America, that tried to help voter turnout and tried to help the elections. And I'm very proud of all of those things, but they are definitely to some degree at the detriment of my career. And so I'm trying now finally to also make my main focus be my own comedy career and commentary and hosting career, even though the vast majority of the things that I do within that output is still social and political commentary. And I just relaunched my podcast where I summarize the world each week and speak out about politics and issues in a way that I think hopefully will help the planet, help the country, while making you laugh a little bit. And these Young Turks things, like you mentioned, I'm researching and I pulled like 40 all-nighters in the last 3 months trying to get these done by my 7 a.m. deadline, and I'm working myself kind of ragged, but it's just kind of in my nature to do so. And so I'm just trying to create stuff that has an impact on people.
Yeah, I think you've got the tenacity that is required along with the neuroticism that makes you so focused on these many different things happening that they say.
Oh, yes, that was the thing that you just reminded me when you said neuroticism. It reminded me of my first special, Neurotic Gangster, which is
love that special.
Thank you. Which is what I was going to say earlier when you said about these people on the right. We don't know if we're talking the same terms, and they like kind of win these debates. Or these they present themselves as so strong, and that's part of why we need to do so much better on messaging on the left, and part of why I call the special the Mad King is like we need to start claiming on our side, on the good-minded, moral-minded side of society, our messaging to be stronger and create terms that counterbalance the bullshit of virtue signaling or the bullshit of all these terms that just make them seem stronger and us seem weaker, when the opposite is true. I mean, they're flitting in the wind, these self-serving, greedy assholes that are trying to tear down the country for their own monetary benefit and for their own power. And if we don't combat that with equally strong messaging and titling and nomenclature and phraseology, then we are going to lose. And so we can't be so humble that we let the future disappear.
Yeah, hopefully we're not so humble that we do that. That's letting the future disappear seems like an option that isn't desirable.
Yeah, I would say I'm anti that.
Yeah.
I'm very pro future not disappearing.
And
Pro my
where
dog not scratching on this door while I'm doing a podcast, Henry. And you know I was. You knew I was. Come in. But Daddy has to work, so you can't be making noise on the door. Okay?
dogs do not care about podcasts, just like most of society probably doesn't, but dogs even less so.
Yeah, that's true.
And then I think, doing a little less to infighting on the left, like, for example, I would probably have observed a lot of this from being a 28-year-old who went to college fairly recently. I went to a small private liberal arts college called Carleton College in Minnesota. 2,000 students, cold, rural, not a whole lot to do except for try to become the most woke person you can. And that is... again, a completely noble and excellent thing. I mean, a lot of these people too, frankly, I mean, it was the kind of school that attracted people from everywhere in the country, rural, urban, etc. And so you had people who had basically never interacted with like black people that came to the school. And then you had people from like Queens, New York, who had never seen farmland. And I guess, though, that it did become rather clear to me that I think that people who want social justice have a sense of urgency that is super understandable because so many things are overdue in society. Where it can, on individual levels, right, we have to evaluate on a case by case basis, be troublesome is when you feel so strongly that everybody should agree with this thing that you feel is an obvious truth. I don't even really want to name necessarily something that you will, call somebody out who might agree with you 85% of the time, but, and then there's also, this is happening concurrently with this online culture growing to epic proportions where it's a lot more attractive and gets you more clicks and views and comments when you're being a little bit more inflammatory about people.
Totally. But also that's why I don't think it's very helpful to actually be as woke as you can. I think I make fun of that in the special a little bit too. That's too woke. I think you need to be moral. You need to defend the underdog, but we don't need to defend every individual person's every individual feeling being hurt at all times at the detriment and always worrying so much about not stepping on the wrong words or the wrong phrases at the detriment of losing the war. I mean, we're missing the forest for the trees, and the forest is the big battle for the future, and so that's a problem. So I think we need to also like chill the fuck out a little bit too. Am I allowed to cuss on this podcast?
You can. Yes, you can.
Great.
Yeah, I mean,
can you cuss real quick so I feel more comfortable about the fact that I did?
Yeah, dingleberry, fart knocker.
Really, I don't think either of those count really.
You had mentioned the podcast that you do Last Week on Earth. Honestly, Ben, during 2019, which is when I found out about you through Kelly Carlin's interview about your presidential candidacy, I had been in the midst of. It's actually kind of. I relate to your comedy a lot because I didn't know I was in a manic episode in 2018 and early 2019, but I was, because you don't know that kind of a thing until later when doctors are like, "Oh, remember when you did all that stuff?" I'm like, "Oh yeah," but I was diagnosed then as bipolar. I don't even know that I fully agree with that. It just was this big confluence of factors. Me living in Manhattan, doing grad school at Columbia, hating one of my professors who was a bully. I didn't hate her, but there was all these things. I was just trying to get my daily nutrition and sleep and everything met. I just wasn't sleeping, and it all spilled out of control. But a lot of it, frankly, came from being in this city where there's so much power. It's the financial capital of the country and probably the world. And seeing so much injustice still be put on display and no one caring, and you walk by the homeless person on the street and it's just so indifferent to you. And working in, essentially I was working in fast food, and some of the clientele were just absolutely abhorrent to my black peers for the most part. I broke down in tears once from seeing one of my black peers be treated so badly by a white woman. And that, I think, is what is appealing to me about like you're special, like the Mad King. You are just people can, and it was true in Neurotic Gangster as well, where you were shouting about like how ridiculous the automatic hand drying machines are. Your hands are still wet after they've been blowing on you forever. Very, very funny bit. But just like that was my brain like that. And so that's why when I tap into your stuff, I'm like, man, it feels good. But it's also like, I used to be there being angry about everything. I still am, because there's plenty of stuff to be angry about, but I found where my own personal health limit is in that conversation. And like, for example, with your podcast, you most recently are reviving it for like season 2, right? And you're trying not to be
season 11, probably more so.
Right. True. Cause there's like well over 200 episodes.
You're doing this for 11 years.
Right. That's true. And you're trying not to be as hard on yourself, you mentioned, about, you know, whether it's your release schedule or just things being perfect. And so what inspired you to want to be publicly saying, I'm trying to be less hard on myself, you know? Just
therapy, everything. You know, I always just try to be as honest as I possibly can with my audience, because it's a lot easier to bare your soul than it is to, you know, try to create an artifice and maintain it and remember what you said and what you didn't say. And also people connect to it better. And it just leads to comedy more. The more honest you can be, the more you can connect to your true frustration, which people have always told me, for better or worse, that even when I'm very frustrated or very angry about something, I come off as funny oftentimes. And so it just leads better into having a more strong voice and strong opinion about things if you can just truly let loose and not have to worry about how you're presenting, but just be more vulnerable. But yeah, I started therapy a year and a half ago, and it really has changed. I mean, it hasn't changed me drastically, but I think it's just teaching me to realize some of these negative thought patterns where I'm very hard on myself. And even though I'm doing a ton of things, all I focus on is I'm failing at the things I'm not doing, and that's no good. I mean, it's, you know, I'm getting older, and so I don't want my life to end and feel like I was a letdown to myself, when in fact I probably should be proud of the things I've done. I've done a lot of things. So I'm just trying to, and putting it out there helps. It helps hold you to account. You're reminding me of it now. That's helpful.
I think therapy is, obviously we've been in the last few years in a space in American culture where we're talking about mental health and talking about those things more and trying to destigmatize. I also think that it's a world or an industry or whatever, a profession that has been maybe hindered by the fact that it's very difficult to get a good, accurate, positive depiction of therapy in like a movie, a 90-minute movie, because movies are, I mean, there might be one scene where the, you know, protagonist has to go to the therapist or something, and it's really the kind of thing. A lot of therapy, I think, is somewhat mundane, but I also think that the growth that occurs from it has to happen on a much larger time scale than maybe a lot of media is able to present successfully. Like, I can't,
for sure. That's why a lot of
Good Will
people,
Hunting is an exception. Good Will Hunting does a great job of depicting therapy,
and people say The Sopranos did a good job of it. I didn't really watch The Sopranos, but
nor did I.
But he was in therapy like the whole series, and that was a big thing. But yeah, I mean, a lot of therapy can be mundane, but also I think for me, oftentimes it's on Wednesdays. So it's not always mundanes.
And also, I don't know why I just want to go to youth group now. When I was in church in high school, we would have youth group on Wednesdays.
It's the most fun thing that would ever happen. I'm too old for that.
Yes, that's true. You're 42, right?
Well, something like that.
Okay. I do hope people check out the Mad King. Really, it's right behind you. They can't, make an excuse that they couldn't spell it. It even says YouTube behind you, Ben Gleib, the Mad King YouTube.
Yes, it does.
And it wouldn't be too surprising to me if you are receiving repressed views based on just what you're talking about and how you're doing it. Yeah, I heard that on Nikki Glazer's pod today.
What's that? Oh, on Nikki's podcast. Yeah, I feel like I'm being shadow banned. I mean, luckily, thanks to all the press I've been doing to try to counteract that, it's starting to take off, the views. So I want to knock on wood and hope that turns away and that we maybe are starting to break through. But, you know, it's just something I've found in general, and I guess if shadow ban's probably the word for it, is when you talk about smarter things, the algorithms do not like it. You said it earlier. You need to be extreme. You need to be reactionary. You need to be inflammatory to blow up the internet. The first 3 seconds of a video has to be, I'm about to beat up 24 homeless people, eat 14 sandwiches, and have sex with 42 ninjas all in the next 2.5 minutes. Stay tuned to hook people. And it's like, all that does is dumb down our brains. And honestly, it makes ninjas pretty sore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I want to write a children's book about whether a clown can also be a ninja and whether a ninja can also be a clown. What people don't know is that this is actually a subtle reference to my love. I like fandoms. I love the Insane Clown Posse. You know, you heard that in half an hour. You've heard that I hated Columbia and that I love Juggalos. So,
and you're a rapper, so I can't wait to see what your rapper mask looks like.
Yeah, it's a little like MF Doom's, but more Asian inspired because I am half Japanese too.
Interesting. What's the other half?
Basic white. No, sorry, that makes it sound
I'm
like
half
white
Japanese
is default.
and half basic bitch.
True. Actually, a lot of my show too, a lot of my guests are like local Eugene, Oregon people. So let me ask you briefly, because we're a half hour in now, like everything you know about Eugene, Oregon, and what your perception of Eugene, Oregon might be. Have you been here?
I think I've been to Eugene, but I don't think
because you're slacking. Steve Hofstetter comes here often.
Well, I bet Steve, God bless him, does 150 cities a year, and he'll go to any venue, small or large, they'll have him. Lucky for him now, and after, not even luck, it's a lot of hard work and talent, but he's now, filling up bigger venues. But for a long time there, he was going to any coffee house or bar that he could put up chairs and turn into a comedy venue, and he really built quite a fan base by doing that. But I think I've been to Eugene, but I don't really know anything about Eugene. I know it's in Oregon, and Oregon's in the United States. I know that the Oregon Trail probably passed through Eugene, and that there's a wonderful little motel owned by Eugene Levy that is not in Eugene, Oregon, but they do share a name in common, and both of them have great eyebrows.
I just hope that Schitt's Creek was not inspired by Eugene in any way, like The Simpsons was inspired by Eugene's neighboring city of Springfield, Oregon. And we will...
True.
Yes.
And also I hope that Eugene was not the inspiration for eugenics, which is not how you pronounce it, but I was trying to make those connect.
Well, frankly, I mean, the KKK was pretty present in Eugene and still probably has elements. And so that's not part of the happy...
You're not selling this town great.
No. It's
you
lovely.
You ran for mayor, right? You ran for city council?
I ran for mayor. Yes. No, actually, I wanted to...
second in like a six-way race, seven-way race.
I finished second in a 7-way race. That's hopefully... I needed to lead with that in order to get my foot in the door for you to even care about this podcast. So I'm glad I did that. I do think that it probably had a lot of parallels in terms of like... Honestly, I sit back and I look... So May 2020 was the election, like May 19th. And then I believe it was on the 24th or the 25th that there was an uproar about a man who was murdered by a police officer in Minnesota. So the George Floyd uprising occurred directly afterwards. And of course, a lot of my platform had things that they would end up demanding in the movement, and no one took it seriously before that uprising occurred, And so I got to sit back and say, okay, now you want to do, or at least you want to give lip service to some of the things that are being proposed here.
Like what?
I would say that I actually had create arts and creativity as part of my platform. And so like I would go to the mayor's art show and they had literally one piece that was depicting a person of color. And it was like a black guy, like far in the dark corner. And I just thought that was really cringe. So just like, I had 64 policy goals that I articulated in 8 categories. So I was very, very methodical with it. I don't remember them now all that well. But in general, Eugene has just this history of it's like, okay, all of Eugene's history. Okay, there's good things in there, but we're okay with racism and we'll be a hub for racism. And then all of a sudden, maybe the 60s happen and we're like, actually, we're the most progressive place in the world. We're like this anarchist space. I don't think we need to talk about Eugene too much, but I take pride in helping people confront that history and try to confront it in a way that can lead to them being more educated about who has always been their neighbors here, who hasn't been included. For example, Ward 8. It's the area with the most Latinx population, and also the most polluted area in the city. And so are we okay with that? Is there things we can do to establish more equity in terms of air quality, etc.? But I sound like I'm on the trail again, and I'm not. But I wanted to say, because my head goes in so many different directions.
Latinx, another term that people that are too woke are trying to push on the Latin community that they do not seem to like. That
seems to be the case, and you wouldn't have been able to tell people that when I was in college, man, at Carleton.
Right. Like I mean, you can't even say Latinx in Spanish if that gives you any. It would be Latinx, which doesn't sound good to anybody.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
the very basis of Spanish, it's a language that genders every even inanimate object. You know, things are male or female, and to say, well, no longer Latin people, now all of your people are without any sort of identification to what your language has always been based in. It's one of the romantic languages, and I think we don't need to do away with gender identity to embrace people with different gender identities. Gender identity creates a lot of the polarity in the world that makes it interesting and fun.
Yeah. I actually like that in your special, Nikki made the point that you do topics that maybe seem like they've been done, like religion, but you have unique or interesting angles on them, or you're a smart gentleman, Ben. It's nice to see somebody up there on stage who I know is very intelligent. I mean, I don't get that from watching a lot of comedians all the time, even though it takes intellect to do comedy. And you ended your special, funny enough, you're welcome, on wait, what was the terminology I was going to use? What did you end your special with?
The moon thing?
Yes, lunar events. Who ends their special with critique of the media hyping up lunar events? But it's so fucking true.
Well, look, a lot of comedians won't take on the moon, but I'll do it. I'm not afraid of Big Moon. I have never bowed down to Big Moon. They can control the oceans, but they cannot control my mouth. But it's true also as to, Nikki said that, and it was a compliment. She meant it that way, I think, but when you're talking about the large topics, you're going to have a million people talking about them. It really is about the angle and what your joke is. Because
one that comes to mind, though, is airplanes.
Religion, of course. What's that?
Right. One that comes to mind is airplanes.
Yes.
I mean, that's theoretically it's
yes. I was so nervous.
Topic.
I was so nervous. That's the only joke in the special that I wondered whether I should take out or not, because it's what is made fun of as the hacky topic. But I don't believe anybody's ever done my joke or had the realization about the volume of announcements on the airplanes that I do in the special. And so, I'm going to keep it in and put it on the poster.
Am I infringing anything if I roll the clip now? Like,
roll
not
it,
now, but I'm rolling it for the people because it's
roll
funny.
It.
You decide. Okay.
But we're not capable of complex thought. We can't even get simple things right. How come we can never get the volume of the announcements right on airplanes? We've had aviation for decades. No one's told this to the airlines. Always the announcements are far too loud or far too quiet. And the important ones are far too quiet. And the dumb ones are far too loud. The captain of this vessel gets on. He's always like...
major engine fire at the point. So you want to put your head in between your legs, secure your legs in between your legs, and suck your own dick before sucking the dick of anybody sitting to your left or right. Make sure your dick is firm in your mouth before sucking the dick of anybody to your left.
I'm like, I'm sorry, did you say engine fire? And then 5 minutes later, a flight attendant comes on. We're going to be coming down the aisle with the United Mile Blaster card. We're going to give you 50,000 bonus miles. Can you use that speaker for the death announcement? Because I'm sitting here sucking my own dick and I don't know what's next.
All right, you watched it. I think you agree that it was probably pretty funny.
Yeah, you didn't even play it for me now live, but my God, did it make me laugh.
someday I'll be willing to pay what $15 a month for some StreamYard or some service that's more interesting and dynamic than Zoom. But
I think StreamYard is free for the beginning levels, and B, you can screen share on Zoom.
All right. Well, anyway, let's move on to.
Listen, I can't help but give people notes. If you know anything about what they make fun of me for on SDSC, I always give notes. It's to help. It's not to be rude. It's to help improve people's product because that's what I do.
I think that's wise. No one also gets out without of my show. I'm fucking nervous. Like, this is cool, man.
Why are you nervous? Don't be nervous.
Because you're famous.
Do I seem intimidating though?
No, you definitely don't. But it also is a little bit
don't? I'm kidding.
But also, I mean, you're using the same background that you do all the other shows with. It feels like I'm jumping into something that's just way above where I'm currently at.
Now, let me tell you, it's all perception, man. It's a professional setup. The thing looks great. Your lighting looks great. You're a very intelligent person yourself. You're funny. You're accomplished. I appreciate it. It feels good for my ego that you're saying all those things, but it's not true that I'm above where you are or you're below. It's just all about the forces that you can't control that determine what you get exposure to or access to, but it doesn't affect the quality of the product or certainly not the quality of the person. So don't be hard on yourself in that way.
Yeah. Funny, you mentioned earlier your fiance. I mean, your girlfriend is now your fiancée, and
fiancée. She is my fiancée.
Yes, and
she's my
maybe your financer.
Swing around on a chandelier.
Yes, but I think, frankly, that when it comes to being a stand-up comic who's trying to
stand-up communist, are you accusing me of something, Thomas? Come straight out with it.
I'm falling apart by the seams
Are
right
you now,
now.
or have you ever been a member of the stand-up communist?
My sister attended Reed College, where they still sell T-shirts that say "Communism, Atheism, Free Love." And they got in a little bit of trouble during the McCarthy era. We're about 8 steps removed from where I was
recruited by Reed College when I was in high school to go to Reed. And I remember to this day, they sent me a pamphlet, and I thought it was kind of trying to be intellectual, but also very cheesy, and I was not interested. It said, "Man is a reed, but a thinking reed."
Yeah, that sounds like them. They have an interesting... well, we don't need to get into Reed College. What I wanted to get into was that success in stand-up comedy, to me, it would seem like in showbiz in general, there's like a really like, when you're making millions of dollars a year, that's like what, like the 1% of the people that actually do your act.
Actually, people that
less
do
than that,
it's probably 0.1%.
Right, exactly. But as far as being successful, being financially comfortable enough,
1% is 1 in 100. So I mean, it's probably 0.01%. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, frankly. So I would think of success as being like, some of the basic life needs that are met, enough notoriety, you can go out and get some love when you're on stage. But the fact also that you've convinced who I'm told is a beautiful woman to marry you, I think you probably have more success than many of your peers just from that.
True that.
Can we get into that?
I mean, you're told she's a beautiful woman. Just look back to the end of March in my social, and you can see photos of our engagement. She's stunning. And she's stunning in every way. I mean, she's beautiful, but she's just the most interesting, lovely, funny, supportive, caring, sarcastic, both optimistic and people-hating, like sardonic, just hilarious human being. Just does so much so well, multitasks so well, cares about the little details of her life and my life more than I would have dreamed. I mean, I'm very, very lucky to have met her. Her name, I'm blanking on her name right now, but I know she's great. I know she's one of the best.
Right.
No,
well,
Carmela's wonderful. She's incredible.
Our blind spots can be both on display here, because here I am just being like, you got a woman who's pretty, right? Like, not talking about any of these other things.
And she just became a professor, for crying out loud. Just became a college professor. Pretty darn cool.
I would like to do that. I would like to be a college professor.
Oh, you don't want to marry me, thank God.
And Idiotest, though, man. Let's talk about that. Once I found out that you had that show and it was on Netflix, do you know why it got pulled from Netflix? I mean, they're pulling things left and right. I think they're just trying to figure out how to be financially solvent.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they got it second run. They got it for cheap. I know that we were the second game show ever on Netflix. It was Jeopardy and then my show. And I know that tons of people were watching on there because I would get messages constantly of people discovering it. But I also know it must have just been not enough of a number for it to move the needle for them. And they need, I guess, pretty big numbers. And they don't release numbers, so I don't really know the answer. But they had the option to pick up another 40 episodes, and they didn't, which was frustrating to me because it was pretty cool to have a show on Netflix. But what can you do?
It was. I mean, I was looking through your bio because there's so many things that you've done that are notable and impressive, but I'm trying to think of what sounds the most like, what's the most simple way to cut it down to like, oh, he had a show and it was trending on Netflix. Like, that's like the most, like, I don't know. It checks the box of being like, he's made it. Do you feel that you've made it?
It depends what day you ask me that question.
Right.
Because my show was trending on Netflix. I also didn't get a penny for that, for it being on Netflix. I signed a great deal. I feel generally very established in the comedy world, but sometimes I don't. When I took a better part of a year off to run for office and I came back, I felt out of sorts. And then I had a cool night with Chappelle that made me feel back. And then the pandemic hit and I got dropped by my agent. And then, it's just a lot of ups and downs in this business that always keeps you humble. That's why comics generally are nice people even when they make it to the very top, because they've just battled in the trenches for so very long. And so do I feel like I've made it in comedy? Yes and no. I feel like I'm established and respected a lot, but am I financially secure for the rest of my life? Definitely not. That's a big part of why I have to hustle this much. Am I even financially, solid for the next few years? No, I need to really hustle to be able to stay above my bills and above water. But luckily I'm always able to do so, knock on wood. In recent, for many years now, work does tend to come in. I just have to sometimes not sleep for long stretches and work very hard to get there. So it just depends. I've been on some cool lists that make me feel good, but then I don't have a tour booked for next year because I took a year off and I don't have a touring agent at the moment and I need to figure that out. But then I'm anchoring shows on the Young Turks and I feel great about that. But then I don't have a TV show on the air for many years, and my first special was on Showtime. I didn't even pitch streamers this time or networks this time because I wanted people to have it be able to finally be shareable, where I can hopefully get it seen by millions, to finally expand my fan base to millions and millions. Millions, I think, know my face. Millions have heard my name, having done 400 episodes of television plus, but millions don't know me very well. I'm not a household name to probably even a few 100,000. There's probably a core group of far smaller than that really are fans or like what I do. I've got a Patreon, but I've only got about 50 patrons, so it's just a million ways to answer that question. And it's also not like Netflix was knocking down my door for my special. So have I made it? It just really depends. But I'd rather answer it this way. I'm making it.
I like that. And honestly, we don't live in a world that's a meritocracy in terms of you having talent means that you're going to just have all of those successes that we've talked about. But at least you do have talent. That's good. It's a little cringy when people believe they're better than they are. And I don't get that from you, even though you do have an onstage persona that is smug. And I don't mean that negatively. I think it's effectively, deployed. When it comes to success, and I'm surprised that you said that people that make it to the top are generally nice, because I think in music, in my world, people wouldn't use that same prediction that Ariana Grande is a total sweetheart, or et cetera. But it's probably you don't have to grind in the same way. And
no, I mean, look, I think most people in comedy is more humbling than most businesses. Right. And I do think most comics, they make it big, they are nice. But what I mean more so by that is they're friendly. They're not going to be rude to people. They appreciate their fans. They appreciate their colleagues, and they are kind to them on the surface. I think very few are nice as far as going out of their way to help other comedians, going out of their way to help people. I don't feel like I have I'm particularly close as far as true friendships to very many comedians, even though I'm surface level friends with hundreds of them. And most of the big names, they don't text me, I don't text them. even when I do text with big names, they'll write back. But when I need something, sometimes they don't write back to that one. And when I'm offering them something, they do write back. And so, it's human nature to some degree. The frustrating points have been when I have had close friends that have then made it to that next level and really pulled back on the friendship is something that's definitely disconcerting. It's happened to me
ask you
a
about
handful
that.
of times, but I will say that it's incredible when you find the real gems, and Nikki Glaser is one of the gems of a human being. I mean, one of my best friends, and just the kindest, most down-to-earth, wanting to help, and constantly, if you look at her Instagram story every day, she's promoting 5 other comedians. Most comedians never do that.
Yeah,
she is
good
wonderful.
Point. Yeah, I mean, and she was just recently on Bill Maher, not that recently, but Bill Maher's Club Random podcast. Is that a dick move that he already had like he's got a show with the panel, he can bring people on, he's making, big ratings and whatever, and he wants to come into the podcast scene now and also do numbers there?
Yeah, that's annoying to me kind of in general, even though I also get it just because they, like I, don't feel probably secure. Like he might think, what if HBO cancels me in 2 years? What do I do? I need to have the access to my fan base. I find it a little bit unnecessary and a little frustrating that I haven't been able to get another, or even had opportunities to be considered for another TV hosting gig or a game show hosting gig. And like Fallon's hosting a new game show and Kimmel's about to host a new game show. It's like, do these guys, you're hosting the Tonight Show. Do you really need also a small game show? Like, at least he's having somebody else kind of host that to some degree, so that's cool of him. But you know what I mean? It's like, it's frustrating that all these huge stars, but they're not doing it to be dicks. They're doing it because they also need to secure their own security. So it's more so my own insecurities that I think more than it is unfair, because I probably would take work as I can get it too. So I find it frustrating, but I don't blame them for it. If that answers your question.
I think you kind of encompass all of the emotions of being a human being in that. The initial, like, really? He gets that? Again, but she? But
I don't think Steve Harvey needs to host 9 shows, and I don't think that's maybe a bit excessive. But
yeah, he didn't seem to get any major blowback from getting that one cue card wrong after about 2 months of press. It was like,
I think he got 3 more.
Might have got more
as a reward.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
The Steve Harvey getting shows wrong with cards show.
Failing upward, Steve Harvey.
Well, he's been pretty successful in a lot of ways too, but
no. I also not to just talk a bunch about people you've interacted with, because I think the name dropping thing is like, okay, am I really gonna do this? Yes, I'm gonna do this, but I want to ask. Yeah, not Monica Lewinsky follows you and has retweeted you, which makes me want to ask about people you've met through politics as well, and just being a politically in touch person, whether or not it's because you ran for office.
Sure, yeah, Monica, I was friends with her brother growing up, but we haven't talked in a long time. But then randomly she got booked on the Telethon for America 2020, the pandemic edition one that we did, that I was so fortunate to be able to host with Rosario Dawson and executive produced with her and Alyssa Milano, and we partnered with Represent Us, the amazing organization, and she was on it, and we just kind of bonded in tech check, and I told her that I was friends with her brother, and we just kind of hit it off, and she started following me, and she's retweeted me a few times. She's pretty awesome. I don't know how you figured that out. Is there like an app you can see who's retweeted you or something?
I was kind of thinking about Nardwuar should do comedian interviews too, like people who can pull out the most random weird facts about comedians. Are you familiar with Nardwuar?
No, I'm not.
Oh my god, Nardwuar, Nardwuar. He does all these interviews on YouTube where he pulls with musicians, and he's like,
I love that.
I
love random facts and deep pulls. I mean, it's been incredible being with you on this podcast because you know a lot of the things I've done and you've followed it, and so it's exciting for me actually, because normally people don't even do any research, and you're kind of having the same conversation over and over again. This has been different, so I really appreciate that and I enjoy that. But who else?
You've met Barack Obama, Bill and Hillary Clinton in 2008. I think you met them all.
I have. Barack Obama follows me on Twitter. That's a pretty awesome thing. He follows a lot of people, but not everybody. Yeah, I messed with Obama and Hillary and Bill and John McCain on the campaign trail in 2008. Who have I met? Andrew Yang. I was just tweeting at him last night because I'm angry at him for starting a third party right now at the most fragile moment in our democracy. And he and I did some of the same campaign events on the trail, and he started following me. We bonded, and he was very kind to do a video shout out to my followers during the campaign, and then he did his speech. This was at the Blue Bash in New Hampshire and Laconia, New Hampshire, I think. And I was speaking after him and Marianne Williamson, and there was a big line of people that were lining up to get autographs from Andrew Yang, and it was before my speech happened. And so my campaign manager asked his people if he would please wait to come out until my speech was done, and he agreed, which was very nice.
That's
Made them wait like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So that was cool. I like him. I think he sees things too much, though, as far as winning issues and losing issues, and he which I also, that's why I'm a little bit on the fence now about why we'd need a third party in this country, why he's doing it now, and he was just trying to. I just think it's the wrong time, and I'm very afraid that he's just going to give the election to the Republican again. This is not a time for a spoiler party when our democracy is very, very fragile, and he has not replied to those tweets yet, so we'll see if he does. But
I think the standard response to "this is not the time" is, you always tell us this is not the time, because we're always told that it's the most essential election. And
I know that's true, but it is more true every time. I mean, I don't think it's hyperbole. Like, unfortunately, the circumstances as far as our democracy goes are getting worse and worse. And so it really is much more the time. Like, we thought that in 2016 when Trump was running, but is it not clearly way worse in 2020 when an insurrection happened and we're now denying elections free of evidence, and half the country believes that there's fraud, that an election that's completely widespread fraud free is fake and is leading towards that? And is it not worse now, 2 years after that, when the former president has nuclear secrets and top secret documents at his house, and people are calling to defund the FBI and threatening our law enforcement agencies just because they went and executed a search warrant to take those documents back before even any charges are made? And still he's trying to subvert the election, and that's demonstrably worse still.
Yes.
And the people that voted against him, the most obviously traitorous president we could possibly have, 8 of 10 just lost their seats in Congress that voted for his impeachment. So it is just true that we are in a worse place right now. And as I tweeted at him last night, it's like, look, I could get behind supporting the concept of the forward party if you promise to not run any national candidates till more than 4 years from now. That would take us through the midterms and the next presidential. And if things seem to be the ship seems to be riding at least back to some semblance of normalcy, then go for it. But
yeah, full disclosure, I would love to have him on my pod someday, and maybe he can respond to this discussion, really. But yeah, who knows if that would take place. I definitely really enjoyed his presidential campaign, and then when he ran for mayor of New York City, I kind of observed that maybe there was he was willing to attach himself to ideas based on what's politically popular.
I don't like that.
But I also think that he probably genuinely, whether he has allowed himself to believe this or he has a well-reasoned rationale for it, the problems in our democracy and the things that are breaking down, he would probably describe as specifically a function of the two-party system. And he would say that this growing clash between parties that's making this cult of personality arise on the right, and this sense of what's going on the left, like we're having to deal with all these catastrophic things, like is a outgrowth of the two-party system.
Sure, but he wasn't.
I don't know that I agree.
But he wasn't saying that when he ran in 2019 and 2020, and he wasn't saying that when he ran for mayor just last year. So he's only saying it now when he's out of options.
It seems the thing that people have known him for on a wide scale, like the UBI, that's not a part of the Forward Party's platform, because he's just trying to. I mean, I can relate as a person who tried to get in politics and tried to grab as much credibility as I can, but it seems like he's trying to find people as broadly as possible that will be palatable to his idea of the Forward Party, even if they have done things even if they're standard issue Republicans who have supported all the wars and the things in the past that have been like, do you really want these people on your side, Andrew? I don't know.
That's the thing I don't understand either, is like, I totally do think we need a third party, and I think a two-party system is idiotic, but the modern day Republican Party, with very few fringe exceptions like Kinzinger and Cheney, and that's only with the issue of democracy, they still vote against very common sense moral things that are needed in most other categories. How can they be in the same party? I think I oftentimes I get torn a lot between that a lot. I always try to speak to the other side, and then I think, forget that. They're too far gone. In my eyes, the modern Republican Party has pretty much become a force of evil. And so you can't have a party made up of half evil and half good. That's not a party. We need to push them into the dustbin of history at this point.
A friend of mine who hosts a podcast locally here called Spent the Rent Podcast, Patrick Stutz, he texted me today. We were talking about Liz Cheney. I watched her concession speech where she unequivocally concedes that she lost by a lot, which
would have been hilarious if she did not concede it. If she was like,
would have been funny.
This was a fraudulent election. We're going all the way.
But that would have been funny. But she was also invoking Lincoln and how he lost a House and Senate race before he won the presidency, and kind of doing this is the beginning of the fight, not the end kind of thing. My friend Patrick thinks that she will run on a third party ticket to try to ruin the election for Trump in 2024.
Well, I hope that happens. I hope that happens. I'd also love to see her with a very tall black hat and a beard. But I
was thinking it would just be interesting in a Republican primary to see her debate Trump, but
that would be awesome too. That I would love too. Mm-hmm. I would love that. She'd be good at it. She talks a little slow, but she'd be good at it. But how much has our democracy fallen when we are hoping we are saved by Dick Cheney's daughter?
Right. I want to be respectful of your time. You've had a really long day doing press. And even though it's clear that you're having such a great time with me, you actually want to be doing the pod for like 2 or 3 more hours.
I want to keep doing it for hours.
I'm the one that has to reject and be like, okay, Ben, you're a little bit too pushy on that.
But please let me stay.
The final question of the show is, I mean, it's directly related to what we were just talking about. And in fact, I should say that your campaign's motto was take our democracy back.
Yeah, you know, well, it's pre-insurrection.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, these people, these out-of-the-box thinkers, we always think that they're just these fringy people, and then history tells us we should have been listening to them.
Well, look at how many people, like you said up top, kind of laughed at the idea of a comedian becoming president, and look at Ukraine now. The hero leader of the planet, Zelensky, famous comedian before he ran and played the president for many years on a comedy show.
Right. For me, it was talking about the basic dignity and rights that unhoused people have, because Eugene is the most unhoused people per capita in the whole country. And wow. We're also a very big track and field town, the hometown of Nike. Birthplace of Nike was University of Oregon. And of course, they've got these big track meets, and they sweep all the homeless people away and force them to relocate in ways that are often unsafe, and etc. So
not cool.
So that's something I talked about, and then that became a much bigger issue afterwards. But it's always an issue. And the question that I was getting to was, what is something that is broken in society, and what is part of a solution in the mind of Ben Gleib?
Our democracy is broken. Our government is broken. And the solutions are, we need to, in the immediate term, indict Trump on every charge possible. I want all 5 cases that are coming at him to lead to 3 to 5 of them with major indictments and convictions and jail time for all of his...
No one's above the law.
...supporters and endorsers. That's a basic part of what our country is, that no one's above the law. And starting to then, beyond that, jail anybody who then continues saying, oh, they are doing this as a political persecution. If you don't have evidence, you don't have an opinion. If you don't have evidence, you don't have a right to say that what's happening is wrong or is a persecution if all evidence points to the exact opposite, and that is equally contributing to the unraveling of our society and needs to be punished, because you cannot just be frivolous due to the ego of a party or the ego of a cult of personality, even from all the way down to the smallest supporter, to not be able to wake up and say, okay, we were brainwashed, we were wrong, but now we will make amends. You stick by it, you also then become an enemy of the state. That's part of it. Part of how we fix it also is we need to cancel Fox News. We need to take away their label of news and OAN and Newsmax. They cannot put the word news on propaganda machines. You cannot be declaring war in your lower third chyrons on screen every few days at things that are normal or that are necessary actions just to try to rein in people that are lawlessly trying to take down the country. It needs to stop. It is libelous and slanderous and tyrannical and treasonous and very, very, very dangerous. And we've let it go on for far too long. We need to rein in the censorship that is happening at a rapid rate on the hands of these tech companies that are not letting us even say words like fascism or vaccine or anti-vaccine or sex or whatever. They're just not allowing us beyond the 7 dirty words that Carlin spoke of.
My favorite examples are the Mike Lindell creates the My Pillow guy is like, we're gonna have a real free speech platform, but you can't use swear words because it's against God. Or Truth Social is like, this is the word. I mean, Truth Social as a name is just, it's beyond parody. Right. But I believe they're saying like you can't talk about the insurrection. You can't talk about January 6th on here. It's like,
I would not be surprised. That's insanity. Yeah. And then lastly, we need, the only way to ever right the ship in a more long-term way is we just very urgently must pass sweeping anti-corruption bills across the country until it gets to a pivot point or a critical mass point where we pass it nationally and we get the money out of our politics. We get voter suppression outlawed in every single form, and we make it so that there is no dark moneyed interests that are being the rulers of the day instead of the voice of the everyday person. And Represent Us is the organization that is fighting most hard for that and is most eloquent at a very actionable plan to do that. So I encourage people to go to represent.us, watch the Jennifer Lawrence video, watch the Michael Douglas video, and volunteer to help out what they're doing and passing their reforms at the local level all the way on up to the national level.
2 things. One, my father really bemoaned the repeal of the fairness doctrine a few decades ago.
Yes, that's a major part of what has allowed Fox and their ilk to perpetuate.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was basically a truth in advertising, but for broadcasting, and they pulled it away, and it's insane.
Yeah, it's. I honestly get very scared about the future. I mean, about everything you hit on with regard in response to my question was essentially about how to actually have teeth when responding to just massive misinformation and misinformation made for profit. You know, and so it is really worrisome to me. Don't remember what else I was going to say. This has been a really, really excellent, confident way to end the podcast, Thomas.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I like that ending. I like that soft landing, as it were.
The Mad King,
The Mad Gleib,
by Ben Gleib is on
my
YouTube.
New special.
It's the top link in the podcast description, y'all. So hit that. Definitely give it at least 2 minutes of your time if you're just trying to put a view on it. But really, you should watch the damn thing because it's very, very freaking funny.
And actually, how long people watch affects algorithm, I'm told, more than views. So if you start it, try to clear an hour. I think my comedy's a little more long form. You're going to laugh very hard throughout the hour, but you need to make some time. And then if you do like it, please do leave comments and share it on your socials because we need to break the shadow ban. We need to get these ideas out there, and I promise you're going to laugh hard. It's not too serious. It's serious and it's silly. We crafted the set list and very intentionally said it goes from silly to serious to personal story to social issue back to silly. I mean, we really tried to make it follow a flow that really keeps you on your toes and just very laugh out loud enjoyable. So I hope you find it to be so.
I remembered the other thing that I was going to say.
Oh, look at that. He brings it home.
Maybe it's my small town mentality, but you know, I have a good deal of friends who are conservative or conservative leaning. We've been alienated and estranged from each other in the last 7+ years, largely, but I still have a lot of those connections. And I think some of them are frankly going to diagnose you and this podcast and your special as all like woke, like hyper progressive liberal crap that they don't need to pay attention to because it'll just look down on them and it won't give them anything of value. That is not true. And
It's
one
not
of the
true.
reasons
I make fun of extreme wokeism in my special.
absolutely, you also have a bit that makes fun of the roller coaster of what we were told during the pandemic and how best to respond to it.
Yeah, I make fun of the pandemic responses a lot. I poke light fun at the Me Too movement. I poke light fun at lots of things, at vegetarianism. I poke fun at lots of things. I take a lot of our sacred cows and I have fun with them. I don't believe that my special is very far left at all. I feel like it's just human, and I try to see things issue by issue. That's why I'm endorsing the Forward Party to take this I'm kidding. Not now, Andrew. Not now, Andrew.
All right. Hey, Ben, hopefully I will only continue to rise and it'll all be because of you, and maybe you can even come back sometime when you're promoting something else.
I would love it, man. It's been really a lovely, intelligent conversation, and I wish you the best of luck with everything. I really appreciate your attention to detail and your care about the world and your care about things that matter. It's been a true pleasure. It's been a very happy hour and then some spending it here with you. And I miss speaking at the end just so I can end it messed up to make you feel less bad about what you did earlier, and then now you ended it good. And now I bad ending.
Cool. I'm reminded now I'm doing his fist pump. Do you like Bo Burnham?
Love Bo Burnham.
Bo Burnham's hilarious. I was thinking about saying you were my favorite stand-up comedian, but Bo Burnham is hard to beat. And Shane Gillis is right behind. He's been pretty good lately.
I don't really know Shane at all, but I will tell you that Bo was asking me for tips when he started doing stand-up, so there's that.
Hell yeah. Only reason I bring him up is he's got this bit about, is he skiing or is he in a gay porn? And he's the two fists held up.
All
right. Thanks, everybody.
That hand motion, so I'm glad that checked out.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, buddy.
Good luck with everything, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Oh, and subscribe to Last Week on Earth, my podcast, for crying out loud.
Heck yeah.